제2의 중동 붐으로 제2의 경제 부흥을 위한 토대를 마련할 수 있도록 총력을 다해 비즈니스 외교를 펼칠 것입니다.
On March 1st, President Park Geun-hye embarked on a trip to 4 nations in the Middle East, hoping for a second economic boon after the first one back in the 70s. The first stop on her Middle Eastern trip was Kuwait. During her stay in Kuwait, President Park had a summit meeting and signed 9 MOUs related to the fields of energy, construction, ICT, medical services, as well as other emerging sectors. After a visit to Kuwait, the president chose Saudi Arabia as her second destination. There, she met with the King of Saudi Arabia in a bilateral summit to discuss broader cooperation in new fields such as system-integrated modular advanced reactors, or smart reactors, as well as the creative economy. The president also attended the Korea-Saudi Arabia Business Forum. At the forum, she met with the chairman of the Kingdom Holding Company, also known as the Warren Buffett of the Middle East, and asked for investments to be made in Korea's creative industries. The third Middle Eastern country the president visited was the United Arab Emirates. There, the president had a summit meeting with Abu Dhabi's Crown Prince. During the summit, President Park and the Crown Prince agreed to share information regarding processing technologies and certifications for halal food production, which refers to meat and poultry slaughtered according to Islamic dietary law. This is Korea's first international agreement regarding halal food, which has laid a foundation for Korea to advance into the global halal food market. The president also showed respect for the country's tradition and culture by visiting the Grand Mosque in Abu Dhabi. The last country for the president's visit this time was Qatar. Upon arriving in Qatar, President Park watched a taekwondo performance as part of cultural diplomacy to boost the Korean wave. President Park Geun-hye had a summit with the Emir of Qatar, asking Korean businesses to take part in building infrastructure for the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, a project with a budget of $100 billion. Could the president's visit to Middle Eastern countries enhance cooperation between Korea and the Middle East? And would this lead to a stronger domestic economy? On today's Upfront, we will discuss the overall achievements and significance of the president's visit.
Hello and welcome to Upfront. I am Kang Tae-kyun. President Park Geun-hye wrapped up her 4-nation Middle East tour earlier this week, and this was her first overseas trip of this year and another first tour of the region since she took office 2 years ago. Today, we're going upfront about the significance and expected results of the presidential tour in this region, and we have a great and big panel of guests right here in the studio today. Let me start off with Ambassador Kwon Tae-kyun, former Korean ambassador to the United Arab Emirates. Thank you so much for joining us. And Dr. Ji-hyang, director of the Middle East and North Africa Center at the Asan Institute for Policy Studies. Welcome to our program.
Thanks for having me.
And Mr. Hyoung-wook, Director-General of SME Globalization Support Center at KOTRA. Welcome to our studio. And Professor Su-wan, a professor of Arabic Interpretation and Translation at Hankuk University of Foreign Studies.
Pleasure to be here.
Thanks so much for joining us. Now, let me get a big picture pulse right here in the studio. What do we think about this trip? How much meaning or weight do we give to this presidential tour?
I think it's a very important tour. Actually, it was supposed to take place last year. As you remember, that it was delayed because of the tragic accident of the Sewol Ho. So it has been cancelled and delayed for 1 year. So it should have happened earlier. So in that sense, this is a very important trip. And also, I think in a certain sense, it was better prepared this time because of 1 year we got since then. So well prepared and well achieved. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay, does everybody agree on this?
Yeah, I mean, basically, the Middle East makes up about 80% of our oil import and about 50% of our construction project abroad.
Exactly.
So it is really important for our, economic and strategy, ties. And the thing is that then, the current global economic situation is changed mainly due to the shale revolution starts from the United States, and also the continuously falling oil prices. So, I mean, the Middle East is still very important to us, but then we need to probably level up or upgrade our economic cooperation situation with them.
Okay, and then let's talk about why these 4 countries. How do we narrow down to these 4?
We have these 4 countries has abundant opportunities for our businesses with Middle East countries, especially in Saudi Arabia. Just we have nuclear power plant projects with for 100 billion US dollars with 16 reactors by 2032. And also in Qatar, we have World Cup 2022, and also we have Dubai Export in 2020. So I think President chose these 4 countries because we have a lot of business opportunities in this region.
And Professor Kim.
Yes, the 4 nations are actually South Korea's major destination for construction and energy plants, and then as well as major providers for fossil fuel energy. So trade volume between Korea and the 4 countries account for 70% of the total actually trade in the Middle Eastern region. So the first instance, Korea, the 5th largest importer of crude oil in the world, and imports 71% of the crude oil from the 4 states actually, and they receives 24% of its overseas plant orders from this region.
So the pulse that I get from this studio as well, and from numerous media reports, is that yes, it was a lot about business, economic cooperation with these 4 countries. And yes, she was accompanied by the biggest business delegation ever. We're talking about over 100 members of this delegation. What does this mean? Does this show some sort of shift in her business diplomacy, focus for the next, in the search for next growth engine for Korean businesses?
I guess Korean government actually established and started up last year, from last year, the 3-year economy innovation plan. Yes, and one of the key strategy of this 3-year economic innovation plan is overseas expansion strategy. So at this point, actually, this Middle Eastern 4 countries, they try to diversify their economy and diversify their industry. So these Korean government's needs and then these Middle Eastern 4 countries' needs correspond actually to one each other at this critical time.
Then let's talk about how we're doing with these Middle Eastern countries at this point currently, and I guess this is where I turn to you, Mr. Kim. So construction, energy sectors, like you mentioned, these are the 2 main pillars, but aside from these sectors, how are we doing? Numbers impressive?
So far, we just focused on construction and plant projects.
Right.
But I think that this is not very good for us to expand, our businesses with these 4 countries. So I think we have to find, new economic growth sectors such as healthcare, ICT, and just the defense areas. Yes.
But let's talk about one of the biggest risks that we just cannot ignore to mention, which is falling oil prices and its impact on these oil-rich economies. Are we looking at a big risk going for these Middle Eastern countries, oil-rich countries, and potential impact on the Korean economy? Anybody?
Well, yes, it can be a risk, but at the same time, we need to, create this risk as opportunity. Okay, many people say that, well, this can be second Middle East economic boom.
Right.
But the situation is totally changed. Back in the 70s, the oil-rich countries has lots of oil money, so that we were able to jump in and earn lots of dollars. But right now, as you said, there's no really lots of oil money there, but they are preparing for their post-oil era, and they need our probably good successful formula regarding manufacturing sector boosting project.
Like
And
you
that,
mentioned,
yes,
healthcare and IT.
that's their demand. And in our side, as you mentioned about China, China is like really aggressive competitor. Against us. So we should not stick to the traditional construction sector anymore, because China is saying that their labor price is much cheaper than us. So then again, we need to focus on the manufacturing project as well, and also again ICT and medical care and healthcare sector too. So I think this is kind of like a win-win situation, even though we are facing the risk.
So given that risk, the industries in Korea that traditionally enjoyed that oil money, it's not really exactly all smiles these days. Is that really what's happening?
Actually, I don't think that is a real risk. Of course, the oil, the drop in oil price has given some adverse impact on the economic operation of the Middle Eastern countries, especially the Gulf countries. But still, there is some buffer. These four countries, especially these four countries, are different from Russia or Venezuela, where the break-even point is much higher. In terms of the oil price. Now the oil price is around $50 to $60, but their break-even point in the Middle East is around that much, $50 to $60. So there is a still buffer, and there is a time and some room for them to sustain. So I don't think this current situation of the Middle Eastern countries, especially the four countries visited by the president, is in a big difficulty or deep problems. I think they can survive, not just survive, but also continue to prosper. So that's why this time visit of the president is very, very important.
I totally agree with Ambassador
Go
Kwon, because based on recent research from Cambridge Research Energy Associate, actually they say the price of Dubai, price of crude oil could slide to under $50 per barrel this year, but sharp drop from the crude oil price $100 last year actually. But this implies that Korean construction builders they could lose more than $24.8 billion, or 1/3 of the total amount of their orders they won last year. But I don't think this is very risk or critical time, because we can take this as an opportunity, because there certainly is a lot of potential, because many of the Middle Eastern countries, they afford to advertise or diversify their industrial landscape, actually lowering their dependence on oil and developing their new growth engines. This kind of things actually create opportunities for Korea, I guess.
Okay, all right. So I guess the pulse that I'm getting is, yes, it is a risk. It does have an adverse effect on the Korean economy, but it's potentially an opportunity that we should take advantage of. Now let's get another view on this, and outside of the studio, that is. Joining us in this upfront conversation today is renowned economist, Professor Su-wan from California State University. Hello, Professor. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now, we're talking about right here in the studio the presidential trip to the Middle East, and I want to get your outlook on the economies of these four countries that President Park Geun-hye visited.
Yes, the four countries are heavily dependent on oil, energy, and natural gas. About 90 to 95% of their GDPs come from hydrocarbons such as oil and natural gas. As we all know, the price of oil has dropped by 50% from a year ago. As a result, this potentially could be a significant blow to these energy-producing countries. However, these nations also have a significant amount of savings. The amount of money they have saved over the last 30, 40 years is pretty substantial. For example, Saudi Arabia has an investment portfolio of $750 billion. So you can see, even though their income may not be as high as what it used to be, they can tap their savings or that investment portfolio of $750 billion to support their expenditures. But anyway, if the price of oil continues to remain low, at some point I would assume that these countries' economic conditions would slow significantly, and that would impact their spending patterns.
Now, as Korea has a high level of dependence on manufacturing businesses, it's strongly influenced by oil price fluctuations. What's your outlook on oil prices and their impact on the Korean economy?
Low price of oil, that is good for the Korean economy. True, Korea is heavily dependent on manufacturing, but a lion's share of that is for domestic consumption. And so when the price of oil drops, it's like giving a tax cut to the Korean people. With a tax cut, they've got more purchasing power. They are more likely to spend money on goods such as cars, appliances, and furniture, manufactured goods in general. At the same time, of course, Korea does export a significant amount of goods and services to oil-producing nations in the Middle East and South America. However, on balance, I think the Korea is much better off by low price of oil, even though there are some, setbacks in exporting to oil-producing nations. So I would say this is actually a very good positive for the Korean economy.
And here we're calling it business diplomacy, as economic cooperation was one of the key highlights of this trip to the Middle East. What would be your word of advice on how to maximize effects of this trip and benefits of economic ties with Middle Eastern countries?
What President Park is doing right now, I think, is really a very, very good beginning. I've been to Arab countries on a number of occasions, and then to them, relationship is very important. Relationship is important in any country, but certainly in Asia and in Arab countries, relationship is very important. So I would say personal contact, diplomacy, these are very important in promoting trade between Korea and these oil-producing nations. Also, at the same time, if we export atomic power plants or any kind of manufactured goods, we have to have the reliability. So far, they seem to think that the Korean products are very reliable, so I think we need to maintain that reputation. The third thing that I noticed when I visited these countries was they are also very price sensitive. They get competition. They get offers from every country around the world, from United States, Japan, China, and elsewhere. So they're also very, very price sensitive.
All right, Professor, thank you so much. We got to leave it there. Professor Su-wan from California State University. Now back to here, our studio, and let's move forward and talk about some of the demand out there in the Middle East to diversify its businesses and key infrastructure. And if you look at some of the specific names in this biggest ever delegation, I found Naver and SK Telecom, and of course some of the small smaller players in these fields. Very interesting, very impressive. I found it. I mean, it's Middle East, the Middle Eastern market. It's a market that even strong global brands have yet to tap into, penetrate just yet. So we're there. How much of a chance are we looking at?
Actually, if you go to the Gulf countries, unlike our imagination, most of the high-level brand items are there.
Are there?
Including Samsung mobile phone and Hyundai automobiles. So it's already there, but Korea has a strong point and very famous for its high technology. So the thing we have to sell in the Gulf countries is that high technologies. They are quite aspiring, the high technologies, especially the mobiles and automobiles. And so that's what we have to sell in those areas. And I think this time, if Naver goes there, I think that's about software, not the hardware. So that is another area we have to tap into in that region. And this is the first time, I think. Of course, there are some system companies already there, Korean system companies like Samsung SDS and LG CNS are already there. They are tapping the market opportunities there. So that is the areas where we can move on based on our achievement we made in the hardware sectors like mobiles and automobiles.
So how do we evaluate what's the demand out there in the Middle Eastern countries?
Yes, let me just add more.
Sure.
After just 2010, when just Middle East spring breakout, this is due to the just increasing the rate of just young generations unemployment. So after that, the government in the Middle East, especially in just oil-producing countries, they just strengthened their policies for welfare, especially for just education and healthcare, and we need to just understand the democratic structure of just these countries. Young generation ratio is especially higher than other countries. More than 50% are just under the 20 or 30 years. So government they have to focus on welfare for just for the young or for the people in education and also healthcare. So as you know, Korea is very strong in manufacturing and also IT. So we have to focus on ICT in just these four countries.
A lot of room there, huh?
And also, when we think of those GCC oil-rich countries, we automatically think that they are very conservative and very traditional. Yes. But surprisingly enough, in terms of level of SNS users, they just hit the top. So I think we are in the right place right now. I mean, the neighbor and other small, medium-sized enterprises related to the IT field. So
and a lot of young people using smartphones.
Yeah,
but yes, and I also read about these outsourcing deals, not necessarily coming out of this trip, but outsourcing deals, shall I call it, where Korean hospitals somehow take over the operational side of hospitals in these countries, namely, and this article was the United Arab Emirates, actually. So can this be part of this newly envisioned economic partnership with Korea and with countries in the Middle East?
Actually, medical treatment and healthcare sector that was developed intentionally because we wanted to find some area where we can bring in some win-win situations with these countries. And it started from United Arab Emirates. And first of all, we started to inbound. I mean the bringing in the patients from the Middle East. Now we are going out, so we are tapping the outbound opportunities. The first example was the Seoul National University Hospital, established in Ras Al Khaimah of UAE. That was the first case. Now the other cases are following. St. Mary Hospital is going into Abu Dhabi, and Urider Hospital is already there in Abu Dhabi. And I heard the news that Severance is also opening their hospital in Saudi Arabia. So it's a kind of new movement. So it's quite, up to now, it's beginning. We cannot say that it's very successful because there are lots of business models we have to develop. So there are some cases, but we have to further develop this area. And this area is very, very good and important area because that's where we have a strength, because the best people of Korea goes to the medical sector. This area is also very important for them as well, because there are many people there, but still the levels and the qualities of the medical treatment is comparatively low. And many Western hospitals try to develop this market, but they have, in a sense, they failed because not many Westerners wanted to go in and live there. So they're asking us to come and to work together. So that's why we are developing this area, and it's spreading out to other Middle Eastern countries.
So I think overall impression that I get is that there is that demand out there in the Middle East to diversify its oil-centered industries and sort of move beyond to what you called post-oil era. And you're getting a lot of inquiries. Is that true from small and mid-sized businesses about potentially entering this market?
Small and medium enterprises are very important for our economy, especially for export and also just our business in the Middle East. So we KOTRA, we are just have a lot of just projects for small and medium companies to advance, to just these countries. We invite a lot of a lot of buyers to Korea for business one-on-one business meetings with Korean suppliers, and also we just organize a lot of business meetings and seminars, home and abroad. So by just through those programs, we help Korean companies doing business with their partners in the Middle East. Yes.
And that's very important for President Park too, because her startup economy model is about to boost the small and medium-sized enterprises and let them, an engine for new economic, growth.
Until now, just when the president visits, foreign countries, small and medium companies haven't participated. Just big companies like energy or just president plant, they participated. But this time, 59 small and medium companies just accompanied president's visit to these 4 countries. So it is very meaningful. So we have to just expand, just summit, economic summit diplomacies to smaller and medium companies, not just, conglomerate, big conglomerates.
And I want to just mention about halal food industry.
Sure. Yes, that was very interesting.
It sounds kind of like a strange, but the global market of halal food, actually, which is produced and processed under the Islamic dietary guidelines, is expected to grow $1.62 trillion in 2018. But unfortunately, Korean food companies actually, they had faced difficulties because they don't have enough information, market information in the Middle East.
And it's not like they have brand power.
No, actually. And then a lack of market information further than and low recognition of Korean brands in the Middle Eastern market. But due to the President Park's visit to the 4 Middle Eastern countries, I guess this Korea and these 4 Middle Eastern countries, they can work together to share information and then establish a halal food certificate as well. So it'll be good opportunity for mid-size and small-size companies, Korean companies as well.
I just heard that the delegation team signed up several
Yes,
MOUs
they did.
regarding the halal
they did.
food.
Yes, they did.
In this regard, we KOTRA, we just organized, halal food seminar in Korea in this October. We invite, speakers from these Islamic countries. So as you know, just 16 billion people are just Muslims. So halal food market is, very big.
Yes,
So
definitely.
we have to focus on just halal food markets in the Middle East.
Now, when I was prepping for this discussion, I did some research, as I always do, and I read a lot of columns written by Middle East experts like yourselves who are recommending a lot of study on the cultural factors, study on the lifestyle in the Middle East and business environment in this region. I mean, it's true for any other region, for any other company, of course, but why the special need to pay attention to these factors in this region?
To have a business, I think we have to first of all accumulate more knowledge. We have to have some more exposure to the culture, religion, and histories. That should be the first step. The second step is to be more cautious. Even though there are plenty of opportunities, there are a lot of new areas and more windows have been opened by the president. But still, we have to be very cautious because this area is quite different. In terms of legal system is different, the people's behavior is different, and once you go there, you have to know the people. And you have to know the market. Without knowing, then you have more likelihood of failure. So I'd like to caution any businessman to actively seek the opportunities there, because that is a very uncharted area. But still, I'd like to recommend that you have to be more cautious and you have to accumulate more knowledge first.
Listening to you, you said the words difficult and cautious so many times. So I want to get some of the examples maybe coming from your capacity.
Yes,
Is there any anecdote or example that you can share with us?
Yes. Okay. I have experiences living in Saudi and also United Arab Emirates for 6.5 years. First thing is, I think my first bad experience was weekend system is different. At the beginning, Saudi week days were just, it used to be Thursday and Friday. So so you just imagine you work Saturday and Sundays. So because the only the days we can't communicate with other just non-Islamic countries, Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday. So, but now just it became a little bit better. Thursday, and we work until Thursday, Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. So Friday is the only day just we can't communicate with other countries. And second is just all women, just ladies, they wear just abaya in just Saudi Arabia, unlike other Islamic countries. So they also just the ladies, they cannot drive. So,
They're not allowed to drive.
I have to during work hours. I have to just take care of my wife when she wants to go outside. But it's very inconvenient. But anyway, as I said, we have abundant business opportunities in these countries. So we have to understand their just the culture and the religion and behavior.
That reminds me, actually, you were talking about the attire that you have to wear, abaya. The president, our president, President Park Geun-hye, didn't have to wear it.
Yes.
She never wore it, although some of the assistants and female staffs did wear abaya. Is that okay for her not to wear it? Is that because she's the head of state?
Yes, once it's allowed. And the 4 countries visited by the president this time, except Saudi Arabia, most of them they are quite open countries. They want to open to develop the country. So there are some more allowances, especially for the head of state. Definitely is allowed. Okay. This time I heard that translator had to wear abaya, but the other people, especially the bodyguards, they were exempted from wearing abayas, even in Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
What about shaking hands? Is that a stupid question?
No, not allowed.
Not allowed. Okay, so
Saudi Arabia,
she
no.
didn't shake hands. I should go back to the footage.
Whenever I go to Saudi Arabia, I wear abayas, but the Korean MOFA was very clever to mention this abaya issue. Okay, MOFA people say that our female staff wear abaya because we need to respect their tradition.
Yes, well,
but
of course
it is
we have to,
time
yeah.
to think about women's right promotion, though. So they play the double game.
Okay, okay.
And speaking of, I mean, pretty revolutionary, I would say, for Korea as well. But she's the first female leader, president of Korea, and for her to visit these countries that are not necessarily too generous or open to strong and independent women, the concept of it. What kind of message do you think that could send? Is that overstretching it, or what do you guys think?
I'm pretty sure that Saudi women must be very happy to see foreign female leaders visited their countries. Yes. Like Saudi is a very conservative country. However, like female citizens are not really, happy about it. Whenever I go there, I meet some, girls and women, and they, are educated a lot, but they didn't have enough opportunity to, show their, ability and capacities. So even though they are quite quiet, but they know there are opportunities out there
In the future.
Yes, and they must be happy to hear that, or sometimes see that those foreign female leaders like visit their
Definitely,
country.
because I think I want to put some significance for President Park Geun-hye's visit. For her visiting itself has importance for Saudi Arabian women.
Yeah.
Yes, not to mention about Saudi Arabian women's human rights or like that. Because in Saudi Arabia, women have just only had to right to vote in 2004. And then 2013, actually, they first joined the Consultative Assembly of Saudi Arabia, so-called ulama. And 30 women, actually, they took the seats. And then 3 of them were named as deputy chairmen in Saudi Arabia. So this kind of things further and further step, one step and second step and third step. At the moment, it feels like, Saudi Arabia's most conservative country, and Saudi Arabia women, they don't have kind of like human rights. But I don't think that. In the future, definitely further step is undergoing at the moment, and then going forward, further significant changes in women's rights in the Middle East are expected in the Middle East.
And picking up on what you just said, changing times in the Middle East, and I don't speak for every country there, but we did see phenomenon, shall I call it, like Arab Spring. So, and leaders there are getting old, not specifically mentioning some countries there. So what do we say about the political or geopolitical risks in this region that we need to be mindful of?
As you said, the Middle East is not composed of only 4 countries. It's composed of almost 30 countries, so all different. And the most safest countries in the Middle East is the Gulf countries. So this time, the 4 countries visited by the president are very safe countries, even though these days there are some uprising in the Iraq area. And Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, these 2 countries are they are sharing their borders to Iraq. So it's getting more risky. But up to now, I think still these countries are the safest countries, and the people there, especially Koreans, I don't think there is any threat. But of course, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. But short term and over the short term and medium term, they will be quite stable, because even during the Arab Spring in 2011, all the presidential system countries have been shaken. But the monarch countries, like 6 countries in the Gulf region, they have not been shaken much, even though there are some the instabilities in case of Bahrain. These 4 countries are the safest and most stable countries. So I don't see much trouble in the near term. But over the long term, nobody knows. So that's what I want to say.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, so fortunately, yes, those 4 countries are really stable. But unfortunately, we don't expect much, change or transformation soon there. But right now, there's like a huge challenge against those oil-rich regime, which is the ISIS. I mean, an elephant in the room. So the threat from those Islamic extremist terrorist ISIS is really a huge, I think. Yeah. And those 4 countries are so active in initiating the air strike against the ISIS right now.
Exactly. Well, we focused a lot on the business side of this presidential trip, but actually in our pre-interview, you were saying, well, it's a little disappointing. Maybe she could have talked more about security issues, political issues.
Yes. I was a bit
Could you elaborate?
Yeah, I was a bit disappointed by her probably overemphasizing economic cooperation only. Like if you really wanted to consolidate the genuine economic cooperation or future strategic partnership, then you need to listen to your partner's political problems as well. And their political problems right now is not really only for them. It's like for the human beings. I mean, the ISIS problem. And right now, Korean government is kind of active in providing, humanitarian aid money to those the refugees in Iraq and Syria. But somehow President Park really didn't mention about them much, and I think it's a bit lost for our.
She should have highlighted that part of our effort.
Maybe she didn't want to provoke those terrorists there. I'm not sure, but President Park had a speech at the UN General Assembly saying that we Koreans need international, support and help when we are dealing with the North Korean issue and Korean Peninsula issue. If you really wanted to,
get their backing,
then we need reciprocity, right? So we need go there and help them, or at least express our support for their efforts.
Okay, interesting.
I'd like to share some experience of myself. During my terms, there were 3 summits and there were 3 visits by the president to the UAE, and this kind of political issue is discussed and shared, and always there are some summit meeting and some dinner meeting. There are many cases. There are many situations where we talk between the leaders. They talk about the regional situations, North Korean issues, reunification issues. All those political issues are discussed and sometimes agreed upon. But sometimes everything discussed can be disclosed because of some concerns and some sensitivity. So if you look at the press release made by the government this time, you can see some lines. Of course, at the back there are some lines, 1 paragraph about the regional issues, North Korean issues, all those political issues are mentioned there. But that's not highlighted. But that does not say that was not discussed between the leaders.
Okay. Well, we've had a pretty good run so far talking about the presidential tour in the Middle East. Now, I want to get your final thoughts and hopefully your word of advice for the South Korean government and the president, or businesses, entrepreneurs, on how to further enhance cooperation with these players in the Middle East. Maybe I'll start off with you, Professor.
Okay. When President Park met King Salman Abdulaziz Al Saud, she expressed the relation of South Korea and Saudi Arabia of Rafiq in Arabic. Rafiq in Arabic means companion and partner, but it has more important meaning of friend. And King Salman, he replied saying that Saudi Arabia is a desert country with nomadic life. So for a long journey, the strong companionship is needed. So yes, definitely, the President Park's visit to 4 militant countries enhance and strengthening these two sides cooperation. But however, it is a must for the Korean government actually to diversify their relations, cooperative relations, actually to maintain this strategic and economic ties and on a regular basis, rather than exploring ways to break into new markets in the region. So that's what I'm going to stress.
Okay, so build a true friendship there. Director Kim.
Okay. From economic point of view, I would like to suggest that we need to conclude just the FTA agreement with these GCC countries, considering that we already have more than 60% of just economic territory through just FTAs, with other countries.
Exactly.
So also we have to expand, our trade, bilateral trade with GCC countries, and also just the Middle East countries. It's already exceeding just 150 billion US dollars, which is equivalent to our trade with European countries. So one more thing, I would like to just emphasize again, we need to conclude FTA agreement with GCC.
Okay, very strong message there. Dr. Jang.
Okay, Korea has often been portrayed as an economic animal there. I mean, Korea is too much interested in only business ties. So I think now it's time for us to go beyond that image or that reputation. So, it's time for us to gain global credibility and global, reputation of being responsible leader. So I think it's really time to do that.
Okay, all right. Ambassador?
Always in this kind of visit by the head of state, in the preparation, in the process of preparation, a lot of things are prepared. In addition to that, a lot of things are achieved through the discussions and through MOUs or agreements. But it should be the beginning, not the end result. It should not stop there. If there is the MOU, it should be followed up. So I'd like to emphasize the importance of follow-up. Based on the foundations laid out by the president, we should work more. Businessmen should go there, take contract, and develop for the projects. So I think there should be more follow-ups than just the visit by the head of state.
And continue this momentum going for a very long time. Thank you so much for coming in today and sharing your expert insights with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, our viewers, for watching. That will do it for this edition of Upfront, and hope you can join us again next time.